How's it going, everyone? My name is George, and this is the spoiler review for Spider-Man No Way Home. So I did my non-spoiler review a couple of days ago. We are getting into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home and don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. If you did see Spider-Man No Way Home already, or don't care or mind spoilers, then stick around. So it's kind of really hard to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home in much detail without getting into spoilers. So we're going to get into spoilers with this film. So the beginning is basically the touching upon what happened after Far From Home, where Mysterio revealed Peter's identity, the potential legal trouble that could happen due to this, and we see Charlie Cox playing Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil. Although he's not Daredevil in this film, he's only Matt Murdock, and he's Peter's lawyer, and basically brings up how Peter needs to worry about public opinion. And we see that when Peter's going back to school, where you see some people saying, oh, Mysterio's a real hero, including his gym teacher, and then you have some people who are on the side of Peter Parker, and we see his school even makes a wall of heroes for Peter. But like the whole school's fascinated by Peter's new celebrity being Spider-Man. And like they basically they don't go into high school that much in this film. It's literally like the things that we kind of got used to from Homecoming and Far From Home are really only at the beginning of this film. Everything changes once Doctor Strange and Peter Parker try casting that spell to make sure people forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And basically, Peter's trying to convince this lady from MIT not to reject MJ and Ned's applications, because literally they are not getting accepted into these colleges because they are connected to Peter Parker, and it will cause controversy. So we see Doc Ock. That's when Doc Ock fights him on the bridge, and the nostalgia and lore that's being brought into this, where Doc Ock's bringing up the Machine, what was happening in Spider-Man 2 before he ultimately turned good, because these villains are getting pulled in right before they die at the hands of Spider-Man. So Doc Ock literally is pulled in before his Peter Parker talks him into doing the right thing. Green Goblin is pulled in right before he's impaled by his own glider. And so Peter's got to catch all these villains now and return them to the Sanctum, because Doctor Strange needs to send them back into their reality to await their fate, which is being killed by Spider-Man. So, or die fighting Spider-Man. Now, I really like what they did with Norman Osborn's character in this film, because essentially you only see the suit for a brief moment, the original suit, and basically we have that dialogue where he's talking to a mask that he assumes the Goblin is in, and he breaks the mask. And really, Willem Dafoe, as I said in my non-spoiler review, gives such a great performance. Whether it's playing a remorseful Norman Osborn who's being haunted by the Goblin, and then getting into that Goblin persona. And just like the lore they go into in the Raimi and Amazing films, where they bring up the Lizard's plan, which I've never been a big fan of, but his plan of turning people into lizards. The connection that most of these villains are connected to Oscorp in some way. Now, one thing I kind of found interesting was how Doc Ock knew Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin, because as far as we knew in Spider-Man 2, no one except Peter Parker, Peter Parker, knew Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin. Harry didn't find out until right after Doc Ock died, right after he found out Peter is Spider-Man. So, how did Doc Ock know? I mean, he's smart enough to know maybe to put two and two together, because I'm going to assume that in the Raimi universe, the general consensus of Norman Osborn's death was that he died in a Green Goblin-related incident, because no one else other than Harry believed that Spider-Man killed Norman Osborn. No one believed that. Not even the Daily Bugle. Like, that would have been a good Daily Bugle scoop in the Raimiverse of Spider-Man kills billionaire Norman Osborn. So you can see that as a plot hole, but it also kind of tells you about the intelligence of Doc Ock to maybe put two and two together. So Sammy and Lizard are essentially the two villains that are kind of like the benchwarmer types. Like, they do go more into Sandman's character. Like, they bring up how his motivation is always going to be his daughter. How, like he begins to distrust this version of Peter Parker when Kim takes Electro back to the Sanctum, and he's like, wait, did you just kill him? Because originally when he encounters Electro, Tom's Spider-Man, and Sandman comes to help him, thinking that, this is my Peter Parker, he needs help. Because in Spider-Man 3, Peter and Flint did make up after Peter blamed Sandman for his uncle's death. So Peter decides, instead of killing these villains, why don't we just cure them? So they go back to Happy Hogan's apartment where him and Aunt May are staying in, and right away Doc Ock is cured, and he's back to being a good guy. So right when they're about to cure Norman, the Green Goblin personality kicks in, and we are given the most brutal takedown in an MCU movie by far. Green Goblin versus MCU Spider-Man is brutal, just brutal, and it brings back memories of the final fight between Tobey's Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1. Except this is actually, I think, more brutal because they're like going into like walls, or going into like different floors. Just very, very brutal. And Dafoe even said, like, I wanted to do my own stunts in this film, and some of the action sequences are going to be very brutal. They do such a great job with this. And then they do something that, before the PS4 Spider-Man video game came out, I used to think was always taboo. Because I remember in interviews, Stan Lee always wanted this character to be alive. And every time the comics seemed like they were about to kill her off, they either faked her death or took another approach to saving this character. Green Goblin kills Aunt May. And the way they handle Aunt May in this film is the best in the MCU Spider-Man movies. She's always been the subject of criticism in these movies, how Marissa Tomei has portrayed her. But in this film, she does a great job. And she does deliver the line, with great power comes great responsibility. And I know some people are going to be annoyed that it wasn't Uncle Ben. Is Uncle Ben even a thing in the MCU? But basically what the Spider-Man trilogy has been doing is building Spider-Man up to be the Spider-Man that we know. The Spider-Man that has to overcome all these obstacles. And as we see him throughout the MCU, he's been pushing in that direction, and Aunt May's death pushes him to finally making responsible choices. And we see a darker side of MCU Spider-Man where he wants to kill the Green Goblin for what he has done. But after this, we get probably one of the best sequences in an MCU movie, where Ned and MJ wanting to find Peter, and Ned can use magic, which is very interesting, but whatever. He's trying to find Peter Parker, and the first Peter Parker to come in is Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. And Andrew Garfield, who has had to lie throughout this entire several-month period before this movie came out, and had to deny being in Spider-Man No Way Home, comes in, and right away the audience cheered. And I just gotta get into Andrew Garfield for just a minute. If Dafoe was the best as far as the returning actors from a previous Spider-Man franchise, Andrew Garfield was probably the second best in my opinion. I can tell he just loved being there. He gave it his all. He took full advantage of the screen time he was given, and he was given a lot more than I thought he was gonna be. Like, I was expecting maybe just for the final battle, but no, they come in before the final battle, and he does a phenomenal job. And I'm glad to see people are appreciating Andrew's Spider-Man a lot more because he's done a great job with this character. He just never got the best script. And then they try again, and we see Tobey's Spider-Man come in. So Tobey Maguire returns as Spider-Man, and he looks older. I mean, the actor's 46, but I assume this version of Peter Parker is in his late 30s, early 40s at least. And I like how they handle Tobey's Spider-Man as well, because they could have easily gone with the more reluctant, older character approach where he's a bit grumpy, but here he seems the most optimistic, the wisest, the veteran that wants to help the MCU Peter Parker out. And him and Andrew, the way they share their story of loss with MCU Spider-Man is just amazing. And you get into more about how they dealt with stuff. You learn about how Andrew Spider-Man dealt with the loss of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 2 and how he was no longer becoming a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, where he was becoming more brutal. And just the emotion coming from these actors, like, they weren't just in here to, like, cash in on a check. They really did a great job coming back in it, especially Tobey, because Tobey hasn't really been in anything in quite some time. So the fact that, like, he came in and still brought a great performance in this movie just tells you that these guys still care about these characters in these roles, even though they're no longer playing them, as well as the villains that are coming in. And I just love the chemistry between Tom, Tobey, and Andrew. Like, I'm just gonna call them the Spider Bros, because you feel a brotherhood with these guys, how they're sharing their stories, their love lives. And of course, the reaction to Tobey's organic webbing is hilarious. And before the final battle happens, they're sharing their stories about, some of the villains that they fought. And I like how self-aware this movie is of the reception of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. So they're talking about the villains that they fought against. And, Tobey Spider-Man brings up, we fought against, like, Venom, although he didn't call Venom by name. And Peter talked about how he fought against, Thanos, although he didn't mention Thanos by name. And they basically said how they were both aliens. And Andrew Spider-Man, I guess, has not fought an alien. He has not encountered the Venom suit or any alien villains. And he brought up how, I fought a Russian guy in a rhino suit. And they did, which was pretty funny because Paul Giamatti's Rhino was hilariously bad in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And he kind of feels left out. He kind of feels he's not that special compared to these other versions. And ultimately, when you look at the Spider-Man movie franchises, Andrew's movies tend to get lost in the discussion. It's usually, a lot of the time, either Tobey's movies or Tom's movies. And Tobey's Spider-Man reassures him that, hey, you are special. You're an amazing Spider-Man. And he shows it in this movie. Like I said, I think of the actors returning from a previous franchise after Dafoe. Garfield was the second best in this movie. And so they cure these villains and give us some of the best fan service we can ask for. That is handled so well. And you see some character arcs getting closed or getting some closure. Andrew Spider-Man making amends with Jamie Foxx's Electro. And he's telling him, hey, you were never a nobody, Max. And they finally make amends. And Max at this point hints that, hey, when we're going to get a black Spider-Man, kind of referencing Miles Morales. And I'm going to get to that towards the end when I talk about the future of Spider-Man, Tom's Spider-Man. And Otto and Tobey's Peter reunite. And I just love that these two still have a close connection. Otto still thinks highly of Peter, and Peter still thinks highly of Otto, and you see some of those classic lines, like the power of the sun in the palm of my hand, and Peter saying, trying to do better, brings me back to Spider-Man 2, where when Otto says, you're brilliant but lazy, and Peter's saying he's trying to do better. And I like how, and I do want to bring up how a lot of these lines that they're reusing from previous films fit so well. Like earlier in the film, Norman's like, I'm something of a scientist myself. Like, they're obviously played for laughs and nostalgia, but they fit perfectly in the scenario that they're in. So, Green Goblin comes in, and once again, we get another brutal fight between Peter, MCU Peter, and Green Goblin. And we see MJ's falling, and Andrew Spider-Man gives the redemption of his life. He saves MJ, and just the emotion coming from Andrew finally doing what he felt like he failed at doing years ago. And man, in this fight, we see that Tom Spider-Man is no longer the eager, optimistic teen that once stole Captain America's shield in Captain America Civil War, that wanted to impress Tony Stark. Like, he's about to kill Norman Osborn, which is what Norman wants. Like he just gives such a crazy, amazing performance, and he's about to impale him with his own glider, and Tobey Spider-Man stops it. And the symbolism of this scene means a lot because it shows the wisdom and leadership of Tobey Spider-Man, of the three Spider-Men. It shows that he knows that revenge is not going to bring Uncle Ben back. It didn't make him feel better in the first Spider-Man film when the burglar he thought that killed Uncle Ben, and he even brought it up earlier in the film, didn't make him feel better. And remembering when he thought he killed Flint Marko in Spider-Man 3, who turned out to be the real killer, and his Aunt May telling him, like, revenge is not a poison, and it's just going to consume you. And the symbolism, especially because he remembers that this Green Goblin did get killed by his own glider. And he does not want to make the same mistake twice. So this scene just means so much in so many different ways. And then we see Green Goblin stabs Tobey's Peter in the back. Although he's not dying. He says, yeah, I've been stabbed quite a few times. It's no big deal. Although it does hurt. But then they cure Norman, and we see how remorseful he is. And I just want to bring this up. It's pretty interesting how, I know they're pure Sony movies, that the Amazing Raimi movies, like, they don't have their own version of Avengers. They're just so pumped up when, like, MCU Peter's like, I was in the Avengers, and Tobey's like, the Avengers? That's awesome. What is that? And, like, Andrew's like, is that a band? Are you in a band? But yeah, no, this movie had a lot of laughs and a lot of, like, very emotional, sad moments. And basically, during the final fight between Green Goblin and Spider-Man, we see that other universes are trying to come in. You see, oh, that could be the Rhino, that could be Scorpion, that could be Black Cat, that could be Kraven. And the only way to really do all this is to have Doctor Strange make everyone forget who Peter Parker is. It's just not enough to have everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Peter decides to take the ultimate jump. And we see him hugging Andrew and Tobey, thanking them for everything, and saying goodbye to Ned and MJ. And this is very emotional because you've seen how these characters have grown together, and, like, this is a goodbye to them, essentially. And basically, the world now has forgotten who Peter Parker is. They still remember who Spider-Man is, but they don't know who Peter Parker is. And Peter tries to attempt to reunite with MJ and Ned, but decides not to. He now lives in his own apartment by himself. Even Happy has forgotten who he is, and he's made his own Spider-Man suit. And the thing that the more I think about it, Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, is a better movie than Endgame, in it that not only does it end a set of movies, not just the previous MCU Spider-Man movies, but the Raimi and Amazing movies, but it also begins a new beginning that we have no idea what's going to happen. The only real hint that we have about what could possibly happen is in the mid-credits scene. So let's get to the mid-credits scene. So, and I'm not going to get into the Doctor Strange 2 trailer just yet. I'm just going to talk about the mid-credits scene because a lot of people thought we were going to have a Ralph Bohner moment. For those of you who remember, WandaVision gave us that Ralph Bohner moment where we thought Quicksilver from the X-Men movies was coming in, but it really wasn't him. So remember in Venom Let There Be Carnage in the mid-credits scene, Venom came into the MCU, Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock and Venom. So he's in the MCU, we see him at a bar and he's talking about, hey, a guy in a tin suit that flies around. And he wants to find Spider-Man, but right before they can do anything, they go back to their universe. But a part of the symbiote is still left. So that's only our real big hint about what Spider-Man's future is gonna be after No Way Home, because we really have no idea. No one knows who Peter Parker is. It's like, does he find a new group of heroes to form bonds with, since the Avengers don't know who Peter Parker is anymore? Does he, find a new set of friends to move on with, like the MCU versions of Gwen Stacy, Miles Morales, Harry Osborn? Does he once again try to reconnect with Ned and MJ? Will they ever remember who he is? We really have no idea. Like, are we gonna see the MCU versions of Otto, of Norman, of Dr. Connors? Like, when's this symbiote gonna come into play? Because that's really our only hint, and there's not a guarantee that Spider-Man 4 is gonna be the symbiote arc. It might not be until, a fifth Spider-Man movie, because the new trilogy is gonna be coming in, and right away they said we're actively working on Spider-Man 4. So that's what I love about the end of No Way Home. For the first time ever, we have no idea what's gonna happen, other than maybe the possibility of the symbiote, but who knows how long until the symbiote comes into play. Now, Toby and Andrew, I want to get into them before I end this video. Is this the end of them? If this is the last time, I'm fine with it. I think they got a great send-off. It was great to catch up with these characters. I love seeing them again. I definitely would like to see more of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I think he deserves at least one more solo movie. I know there's been rumors that Sony wants them for like a big event film tying into not just Tom's Spider-Man, but Tom Hardy's Venom, maybe Jared Leto's Morbius, and they fight against Null, the symbiote god. There's also been another rumor flowing around that apparently they want Toby and Andrew for Secret Invasion, Secret Wars. Who knows? If they come in, that's great. Look, whether it's in there or Soul Film, I'm never going to say no to more Toby and Andrew. It'd be great to see them again. They did great in this movie, but Toby's not getting any younger. But who knows? The future is open. But yeah, this is my longest video because I felt like there was a lot to talk about. But yeah, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. This is definitely probably one of my top 3 favorite Spider-Man movies of all time. Probably one of my top 3 favorite MCU movies of all time. And I'm looking forward to seeing where they go, because they're really doing something different with Tom Holland's Spider-Man compared to the other Spider-Man. And it's interesting to see, like, is he going to try to reconnect with people, or are we going to be introduced to a new set of characters? Tom Holland's been very open to passing the mantle to Miles Morales. And I can see, since nobody knows who Peter Parker is anymore, him meeting Miles Morales or even Gwen Stacy through them getting bit by Spider and becoming their own heroes. I can see him doing that. But yeah, those are my spoiler thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home, and I stand by my A+ grade. What did you guys think about Spider-Man No Way Home? Comment below and let me know. What was your favorite Spider-Man? Man, I love all 3 of them. Like Toby, Toby's always going to be my personal favorite because I grew up with Toby. But I think all 3 of them are amazing, and they did a great job in this movie. And who do you think was the best villain? I think it was by far Green Goblin. Willem Dafoe did an awesome job. Comment below and let me know. And I want to thank you guys for watching this longer than usual video. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share this with someone that loved No Way Home, or saw No Way Home at least. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.